You know, I have a very close friend, a family that my family is close with, the Ammon family from Deal, New Jersey. And you know, Rabbi Ammon, Hashem should bless him, a wonderful rabbi, him and his wife had this, you would say, minhag, that every year, on Erev Rosh Hashanah, they would go out to the cemetery in Staten Island, New York, and they would visit his mother-in-law. And it was there that they would say Tehillim and so on. One year, Rabbi Ammon and his wife were coming back from Brooklyn over the Verrazano, and as they're driving through the Staten Island Expressway, it hits them. You know, it's not Erev Rosh Hashanah, it's a week before Erev Rosh Hashanah, but still, we're here. We're about to drive by the exit of the cemetery. So he turns to his wife and says, honey, you know, we're here already. Why wait a week and schlep back on Erev Rosh Hashanah? Let's go now. Let's go to your mother. She says, you know, you're right. We're here. Let's go. So he pulls off Staten Island Expressway, goes into the cemetery, and stands by the grave of his mother-in-law a week earlier than usual and begins to pray. And as Rabbi Ammon is davening, he looks up and he sees not too far away, there's a whole group of boys standing around a hole in the ground with a coffin sitting on the floor. Rabbi Ammon sees something's wrong. Nobody's moving. No one's doing anything. Where's the rabbi? Where's the one officiating? Who's running the funeral, the burial? Kavod Hamet. So he turns to his wife. He says, honey, is it okay with you if I just go over for a minute to those group of guys? I think they need a hand. She says, yeah, go ahead. So he goes over to these boys, and he sees standing around the hole, there's a coffin, and there's 5 young boys, and there's a few friends of family, another 4 people. And Rabbi Ammon turns to the boys and says, guys, what's going on? How come nobody's doing anything? And one of the boys looks up and says, Rabbi, it's good you showed up because, you know, they just brought us here and put our dad's coffin down right next to the hole. We don't know what to do. We're just standing around thinking of what's next. Thank God you showed up. Rabbi Ammon says, oh my gosh, so if that's the case, let me help you out. He says, guys, listen up. Do we have a minyan? He looks around. He sees the 5 boys with the 4 family friends. He says, wow, you guys have 9 people. I'm number 10. Now I'm understanding why Hashem sent me here a week earlier than what we typically come. He says, okay, so Baruch Hashem, we have a minyan. Listen, guys, grab the ropes. Let's slip it under the coffin. 3 on this side, 3 on that side. Hoist it gently, and let's put it down. Put your father to rest. And that's exactly what they did. They hoisted the coffin and put this man to rest and covered the top of the coffin with dirt. And then Rabbi Ammon turned to the boys and said, okay guys, bechavod, kaddish. And one boy looks at the other and says, what? You heard me, kaddish, yitgadal v'yitkadash. And one boy looks at the other and says, kawa? The rabbi says, you know what kaddish? He says, no, I'm sorry, Rabbi. He says, okay. He pulls out a siddur from his pocket. He opens it up to Kaddish Yatom. He gives it to the boy. He says, go ahead, guys. Say Kaddish. They look up and they say, Rabbi, I don't have to tell you this, but we don't speak, nor do we read Hebrew. You don't read Hebrew? I mean, not even Aleph Bet? No. Okay, guys, repeat after me. Rabbi Ammon began to say the Kaddish, Yitkadal v'yitkadash, and the boys would repeat after him word after word, and the rest of the minyan would answer. And he said the entire Kaddish. And then right when the Kaddish was up, Rabbi Ammon turns to the boys and say, okay, let's finish the job. Guys, grab a shovel and we'll fill up the hole. And one of the boys says, Rabbi, come on, we're here in tuxedos. We don't want to get dirty. We got Leroy on the tractor. He's going to finish the job. Rabbi Ammon says, come on, you don't want to give this to Leroy on the tractor. This is your dad. This is the respect, honor, kavod hamet. Come on, guys. And he figured that he was going to lead, have an example. So he grabs the shovel and he starts to fill in the hole. And he turns around and they're gone. They're gone. Rabbi Ammon says, guys, come back here, your dad. Come on, Rabbi, let him do it. And there's Rabbi Ammon, all alone, with shovel in hand. And he finds himself single-handedly burying a guy until he fills up the entire hole. And right when he was done, he screams out, Leroy, you can finish the job. Leroy jumps off the tractor and runs up to Rabbi Ammon. He says, Rabbi, you did the whole job by yourself. You single-handedly, literally buried the guy. Once you did everything, you might as well put the nameplate on the top of the grave. Rabbi Ammon says, okay. He hands him the nameplate. Rabbi Ammon looks at the name. Simon Pollock. Simon Pollock, it rings a bell. Rabbi Ammon takes the nameplate and puts it at the top of the dirt. And then he turns back and he says, Simon, I did my best. I had your children say Kaddish. I wasn't supposed to be here today. I was supposed to be here in a week from now, Erev Rosh Hashanah. God put me here to be the 10th man of your minyan. You should rest in peace. And with those words, Rabbi Ammon went back to his wife. He turns back to his wife. He says, honey, you're not going to believe this. We weren't supposed to be here today. And there were only 9 guys. I was number 10. And the kids couldn't even read Aleph Bet. I had to say the Kaddish, and they repeated. But at the end, Baruch Hashem, we had a minyan, Kaddish was said, and he had a proper burial. Some guy, Simon Pollock. And with those words, they got back into the car, and they went back to Deal, New Jersey. 2 months later, the Ammons were celebrating a family wedding. Rabbi Ammon and his family originates from Seattle, Washington, and all the family members came in from Seattle to attend the Ammon wedding. And Rabbi Ammon was sitting by the table with one of his uncles, and he tells over the story. He says, you got to hear this crazy story. Every year I go Erev Rosh Hashanah, and that year I went a week early. I wasn't even supposed to be there, and I was the 10th guy of a minyan, and all these kids didn't know what they were doing. They didn't even read Aleph Bet. I had to say the Kaddish. I buried the guy, some guy, Simon Pollock. Just then his uncle looks at him and says, Rabbi Ammon, what was the name? He says, Simon Pollock. He was the guy, the one I buried. He said, Rabbi Ammon, you don't know who that is? He says, no, who's that? The uncle's jaw drops. And his face turns white, and he looks at me and says, Rabbi Ammon, 52 years ago, back in Seattle, Washington, at that time, we only had a shul. We didn't have a school. We didn't have anything but the shul. And we knew that when our young boys grow up to the age of bar mitzvah, if they're to stick around in Seattle, they'll never get a Torah education. So we decided we had no choice. We're going to have to send all our bar mitzvah boys out of town to Brooklyn, New York, to Brighton Beach, to Rabbi Davis's yeshiva. But that's an expensive ordeal. And we needed to raise funds in order to do that. For the flights, for the dormitory, for the tuition. Not everybody in Seattle was up to being able to send their kids on such a big venture. But we knew for the sake of a Torah future, we had to do it as a community. So that Shabbat, we made this big Shabbat Kiddush, and we invited the whole community. And people showed up that don't even show up on Yom Kippur. We had cholent, and we had kishka, and we had kugel, and we put out a spread, and everybody knew about it. And then, at the end of the Kiddush, we had a big sign right on the top of the Aron Kodesh, and it was the weekend for sponsor a boy to yeshiva. And right when everybody ate, and they sat back happy, we lined up all our bar mitzvah boys in the front, and we started to go one boy at a time. And we walked up to the first bar mitzvah boy, and we announced to the community, who's going to sponsor this boy to go to yeshiva? And one guy raised his hand. Who's going to sponsor this boy to yeshiva? And another person raised his hand. And when it came your turn, Rabbi Ammon, Simon Pollock sponsored you. You see, Hashem never forgot. When you really needed Him, He was there for you. And when Simon Pollock needed you, Hashem made sure that you were going to be there for him. Hashem never forgets the bond between the people who are spreading Torah and the people who are supporting us to go out there and give the world the sweetest of the sweet Torah that's out there.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.